Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? All right, let's get back to Iraq because there's a lot going on. As everybody is well aware, Sadr and his deputies have all resigned from Iraq's parliament. It's led to a lot of people speculating as to why would Sadr make this type of move. And also now recently, there's been talk about going back into early elections all over again, which is not what Maliki wants. Before we get started, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I surely do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying silver or gold or any other precious metals, go check out our friends over there at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you're a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and you will get a free half ounce of silver. Alrighty, so here we go. It says an important meeting that brings together resolve, framework, and union to discuss political scene. The Alliance of the Resolve, the Coordinated Framework, and the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan held an important meeting today at the home of the late Talabani. The news went on to say the latest developments in the political arena were discussed and efforts were made to intensify efforts to expedite the formation of a strong government capable of overcoming all the challenges that the country is going through. I don't think they're going to be able to pull that off. Even if they can form a government, it's going to be interesting to see how far along this government makes it. Remember, I've said, do what they do, not what they say. Take a look at this. The central bank announces that Iraqi gold reserves have risen more than 130 tons. Yes, central banks around the world are buying up a ton of gold. Now, don't get me wrong. Banks and central banks buy gold, but they seem to be buying large amounts of it and keeping it. It's easy to speculate that everybody anticipates going back into the gold standard, and we would be looking at a gold revaluation. So Iraq didn't just buy some gold, they bought a huge amount of it. It says the Central Bank of Iraq announced today, Monday, that it had advanced 10 ranks in the table of most countries in gold reserves, bringing the total possession to 130.39 tons, ranked 30 in the world and 4th in the Arab world. Said the bank confirmed in a statement that the purchase of gold amounted to approximately 34 tons, an increase of 35% over what was in the possession, a 35% increase. That's huge. And this increase came within the framework of the central bank's strategy to manage its assets, including it achieves the highest levels of stability and ability to face local and international economic challenges. So this time around, they are definitely preparing themselves in case something should happen to the oil market, which we saw a pretty big drop in oil prices, but it started to rebound a little. Now, for those of you who buy gold and silver, check out this last paragraph. It is noteworthy that gold is one of the most important assets held by central banks and international financial institutions, and a safe haven in conditions of uncertainty due to its acceptance at the international level. This is why I say it's really important for you to own both gold and silver. Maliki's already acting like the prime minister. He's been having a lot of meetings with other countries, and I noticed that the way these other countries are responding, man, if I didn't know any better, that there's something definitely going on behind the scene, because they meet with Maliki and they go, sure, we want to work with one another. But they say stuff like, in this case here, this particular ambassador says, look, we keep equal distance from all political parties. We don't favor one over the other. That's not your normal, hey, congratulations, you're the new government. You guys going to form the government. We look forward to working with you, Maliki. That definitely is a lot different in the tone that they are using when they meet with Maliki. Says Maliki to the British ambassador, Iraq is on the verge of development and economic reform after the formation of the strong and capable government. So during the meeting, the ambassador and Maliki, they discussed the future of bilateral relations between the two countries, as well as the latest developments in the political situation and the ongoing dialogues in order to complete the constitutional entitlements. So Maliki stressed Iraq's keenness to strengthen its relationship with all countries of the world, stressing the importance of increasing cooperation between Baghdad and London in various fields. So the first time Maliki was in power, I think, there was a lot of restrictions on Iraq. They weren't as in position to deal with other countries internationally as they are now. I think Maliki sees a lot of opportunity, if you get my drift. Anyways, Maliki goes on to say that Iraq needs the support of all nations, forces, and uniting efforts in giving priority to the public interest. Which is interesting because it says this comes at a time when the leader in the coordinated framework revealed today, Monday, the occurrence of new differences between the forces of the framework. So the framework isn't as cohesive as people thought, or at least they're not as cohesive as they tried to paint a picture of. There is some tensions inside their little group. A source told the news that the new dispute is related to the issue of dissolving the parliament and going to early elections, as the leader of the State of Law Coalition, Maliki, strongly rejects this. Yeah, I'm sure he does. While the leader of the Fatah Alliance, Amari and Amin, supports the issue. Ghazali, the leader of the, I'm not even going to try to name this particular movement, for the refusal to form any government to boycott the Sodarist movement. He added that the leaders of the coordinated framework will hold a meeting later on in the day before their meeting with Azim Alliance and the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan to discuss a file of dissolving the parliament and going to early elections and coming up with a unified position from all the forces of the framework. And I'm sure you guys can understand why it is that Maliki doesn't want to do early elections. They lost a ton of seats. Sadr became stronger. And they were able to stand their ground right now to keep a quorum from forming so they can put in the government that Sadr wanted. If they go to early elections, Sadr is only going to get stronger. The coordinated framework is going to get weaker to the point where they won't have a third to block what it is that Sadr wants. Not to mention, I'm sure they're pretty concerned about the fact that Sadr has been making some really bold statements lately. Well, there's been many times we spoke about the Iraqi dinar and things that we know that have to be accomplished in order for there to be any kind of consideration and a rate change. One thing is, you definitely want a stable country. And looky here, a breakthrough or an explosion between the Al-Kazemi movement and bin Salman and Biden. They said it is not clear whether the missile attacks that targeted energy facilities in the Kurdistan region in the past few days were an intentional anticipation of the regional calm round by Iraqi's Prime Minister al-Kadhimi. But it is certainly, as observers note, that it may be the most important indicator, clarity on a blazing summer that awaits not only Iraq but the region. Kazemi's visit could also be the fact that he is trying to help squash tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia in an effort to join a coalition with one another so their countries could benefit from their relationship. So we know Biden is head on over to Saudi Arabia and he's supposed to be meeting with Turkey, Jordan, Egypt. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with Trump's Abraham Accord. Also, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, the Emirates, Egypt, Jordan, and Iraq are all on a list of places for Biden to go. This is what I was talking about earlier. It says the Gulf, which have been separated politically and security for years, while Al-Kadhimi's government has so far sponsored 5 secret meetings between officials from the two countries. We're talking about Iran and Saudi Arabia. Then the article goes on to say, although there are signs of calm between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which was represented in the reaching of a military truce in Yemen war last April, and then took an additional push by extending it again at the beginning of June. But it said that this truce may turn out to be temporary and is therefore hostage to any new regional crisis in which the Saudis and Iranians are on opposite sides. So there definitely is a lot of jockeying going on over there in the Middle East. It really is going to depend on who is or who is not running each one of these countries. We move on here to this article, which is interesting because I love the way they word things. It says, solder shadow is still on the walls of the tire. A new dispute between the three leaders. So the leader of the comprehensive coordinated framework of the Shiite forces, with the exception of the Solders movement, revealed on Monday that new differences had occurred between the forces of the framework. The leader said in a statement to the news, asking not to be named, that the new dispute is related to the issues of dissolving the parliament and going to early elections. As the leaders of the State of Law Coalition, Maliki strongly rejects this, while the leader of the Fatah Alliance, Amari, supports it. It said since the resignation of the Solders bloc's representatives from the Iraqi parliament and the withdrawal of the Solders movement leader, Solder, from the political process, the coordination framework has been busy after several meetings and announced a upcoming meeting to discuss between its leaders on one hand and the leaders of the political blocs on the other about the nature of what will lead to matters in political process and the nomination of the first deputy speaker of the House of Representatives, the replacement for the resigned first deputy, Zamili, as well as the formation of the next government and who will head it. It's no secret that Maliki has been pushing for the prime minister position. Lastly, it says here, political sources, some of them from the coordination framework itself, attributed the delay to resolving these files of the existence difference between the leaders of the coordination framework, as one group believes that understanding with the other political blocs must be preceded to form the government without the need for the presence of solder, while the other team's insistence on the blessings of solder. Well, this isn't good. It says, where did the revenues of about 500,000 barrels per day of the region's oil go? According to this article, Barzani has not been very transparent about the way he's managing the oil files. Retirees are getting ready to retire, and they want to know where the money that belonged to 500,000 barrels per day go. Where the heck did it go? He said right now, Kurdistan should be enjoying a lot of prosperity, but that is not happening. You can see here it says that they pointed out that Barzani's party and his family alone in managing the oil file will lead to political chaos in Kurdistan, stressing that there is congestion and popular resentment after the recent fuel crisis and may spark a lead to a revolution that will change the course of the situation in the whole region. This is the type of thing that Sutter is talking about, this type of corruption all over in that territory. Now, this particular article, I've heard many people say, oh, this is it. This is the rate change. They can't have an explosive budget without the rate change. I was like, you guys, every time you see something like this, somebody starts a rumor that the rate change is going to be in this budget. That's why it says we need an explosive budget. So how can you have an explosive budget without a rate change? That is not true. You guys don't fall for that. So a member of the Iraqi parliament told the news emergency support for food security and development law are insufficient to meet the needs, while referring to the need for an explosive budget. Said the budget for an emergency support law included some poor governance, but it was not sufficient to meet the needs of the people. Goes on to say there are 15 administrative units that suffer from dilapidated services and non-existent infrastructure at the time the budget allocated according to the food security law, which does not cover even half of the government's needs. So basically, when they say they want an explosion in the budget, is they want to make sure that there's a lot more money than before allocated to the areas of need. Nothing in here says anything about a rate change. And again, this is another one of those articles where they start talking about the exchange rate. Now, I will say this. It is always interesting to me to see how many articles are in the news in regards to the exchange rate. They've already said what they wanted to do, but they're constantly in the news reminding everybody that they have no intentions on changing the rate. If that's the case, then why do you keep talking about it? It does bear questioning. Parliamentary finance denies the possibility of restoring the dollar exchange rate. It confuses the market and investment projects. I don't think he chose the right words. Anyways, it said the Parliamentary Finance Committee denied that there was a recent report about Parliament's efforts to restore the exchange rate of the dollar to its previous level of 1,200 Iraqi dinars for every $1. Anyways, one of the committee members went on to say it is very difficult to restore the dollar exchange rate to its previous state. And this matter is not one that tasked the House of Representatives. And it goes on to say it is not true according to the number of reasons, including that changing the exchange rate is one of the exclusive powers of the Central Bank of Iraq. So it's not even in the hands of the Ministry of Finance. We spoke about this before. This power is solely in the hands of the Central Bank of Iraq. He added that the economic situation is not as some are talking about. That is, despite the financial surplus achieved from the rise in the oil prices, there are debt owed by Iraq in favor of foreign and international banks of no less than 100 trillion dinars, in addition to some hateful debts as a result of the Gulf War. He added that as a government and parliament, we have failed to limit the excessive increase in reducing the operating budget, meaning that most of the state's resources go to the operational, and therefore, no matter how much our financial resources increase, they are not enough to fill the operating budget and allocate a good part of the investment budget. And if we change the dollar rate exchange, this means adding 23% of the state's budget as a difference in the exchange rate will also create an unnatural state of confusion in the market. As a change in the exchange rate will generate compensatory claims by the owners of some investment projects contracted for the benefit of the state, meaning that the affected investors will demand compensation, and therefore what some are promising about the possibility of the House of Representatives issuing a decision to restore the dollar exchange rate are nothing but auctions and titillations for the filling of the Iraqi streets. But I do think it's very interesting that they constantly have to talk about the exchange rate. Once they've already made their statement about the rate change, they should have just left it at that. Also, I thought it was interesting that during Assad's campaign, he was promising that they would change the rate as well. That's not in the Iraqi government's power to do so. They don't have the ability to do it. It solely belongs to the Central Bank of Iraq. Anyways, that's it for now, you guys. I do appreciate when you tune in. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I surely do appreciate it. And I'll catch you later. I'm out.